Daniel had spent over 25 years building a life with his wife, a quarter-century of shared dreams, difficult compromises, and the comfortable rhythm that long marriages eventually settle into. When that marriage finally ended, he found himself adrift in his 50s, uncertain how to navigate a dating world that had transformed dramatically since he'd last been single. 3 months after his divorce was finalized, he met Vanessa. She was vibrant and engaging, with a quick laugh and an intensity that drew him in immediately. Their connection seemed almost fated, both falling ill shortly after meeting. They chose to weather their sicknesses together, cocooned in her apartment for 2 weeks straight. Those 14 days accelerated their relationship in ways that might otherwise have taken months. There had been warnings, though Daniel hadn't recognized them for what they were at the time. "I'm difficult," Vanessa had told him one evening, her friends nodding in solemn agreement. "I push people away." Daniel had smiled, thinking it was mostly self-deprecating humor or perhaps a kind of preemptive defense mechanism. He'd been married long enough to know that everyone carried their own complexities. He wasn't looking for perfect, just for genuine. The first few weeks had been a whirlwind of connection and chemistry. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the dynamic began to shift. What started as occasional critiques about how he loaded the dishwasher or the tone he used when speaking to waitstaff evolved into daily criticisms about increasingly personal aspects of his character. "You're not listening to me correctly," she would say, her voice rising. "That's not how a man should act," she would inform him, after he expressed vulnerability about his divorce. Arguments became frequent, often erupting from seemingly benign conversations. The most disturbing pattern, though, was how these fights would culminate in Vanessa announcing the relationship was over, only to shift dramatically when Daniel accepted the breakup. "Why are you leaving?" she would ask, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you love me at all?" If he tried to explain his perspective during these confrontations, she would cut him off sharply. "You're interrupting me again. You always do this. You never let me speak." Even when he sat in complete silence, somehow, he was still failing her expectations. Despite the emotional whiplash, Daniel remained committed, particularly when Vanessa scheduled a minor surgical procedure. He took time off work to care for her, bringing her favorite foods, managing her medications, and trying to make her comfortable. Yet even then, lying in recovery, she found fault. "You don't look like you want to be here," she observed coldly. "Your face shows everything you're thinking." By the 6th week of their relationship, arguments had become a daily occurrence, lengthy, exhausting confrontations that left Daniel feeling hollowed out and confused. The only peace came when they were in public, where Vanessa transformed into a charming, affectionate partner. It was as though they were living 2 completely different relationships, the public one full of laughter and the private one full of accusations. The turning point came unexpectedly. A concerned text message from a close friend: "Are you safe? I'm worried about what's happening to you." That evening, after yet another cycle of breakup threats followed by emotional manipulation to make him stay, Daniel lay awake beside Vanessa at 2 a.m., listening to her sleep. 6 weeks. They had been together for only 6 weeks, yet he felt like he had aged years. The relationship had become a house of mirrors where he constantly lost sight of himself. With quiet determination, he slipped out of bed. He packed his belongings silently, careful not to wake her. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final heated exchange. Just the soft zipping of his duffel bag and the gentle click of the door closing behind him. Once safely in his car, he composed a text message. He thanked her for the good times they had shared. He explained that he wasn't emotionally equipped for the relationship she needed. He wished her healing after her surgery. Then he blocked her number, as well as those of her friends who had begun to message him with increasing frequency. As a final act of care, he reached out to her closest friends, letting them know that someone should check on her post-surgery since he would no longer be there. It felt like the responsible thing to do, even as he removed himself from the situation. What he hadn't anticipated was the aftermath. For almost 4 months, longer than their actual relationship had lasted, Vanessa and her friends launched a campaign of harassment against his family and friends. Unwanted deliveries arrived at his home. Messages found their way to him through unblocked channels. The boundaries he had established were tested repeatedly, as though his right to leave was something she refused to acknowledge. In his quieter moments, Daniel sometimes questioned his decision to leave without a final face-to-face conversation. Had it been cowardly to end things over text, even after the cycle of emotional manipulation had become clear? Should he have tried harder, stayed longer, found better ways to communicate? But then he would remember the constant walking on eggshells, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the exhaustion of never being enough despite his best efforts. He would recall the friend's text asking if he was safe, a question that had forced him to acknowledge just how unhealthy the situation had become. Sometimes the kindest exit is the quietest one, both for yourself and for someone whose patterns of behavior make healthy closure impossible. In the still of that night, packing his bag with trembling hands, Daniel had finally chosen his own well-being after weeks of trying to meet impossible expectations. 6 weeks of relationship. 4 months of harassment. And one midnight decision that, despite the aftermath, he knew had been the right choice for his survival. What would you have done in Daniel's situation? Was he justified in leaving quietly in the night, or should he have tried for a final conversation? Have you ever had to make a difficult exit from a relationship that had become emotionally unsafe? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.